everyone, and welcome to BCS Coventry. This is our February meeting, and our topic for today is Coventry Digital Archive. Our presenter is Dr. Benjamin Kineswood. Ben is Coventry University's Director of Coventry Digital. Before this means is that Ben is also Coventry University's person in the Digital Archive project, which he's going to talk about. Before his current role at Coventry University, several years ago, Ben was a radio producer for 10 years prior to achieving an MA and a PhD at the University of Birmingham. He went on to become a research fellow in sociology at the University of Warwick, before moving to Coventry University, where he was the director at Photo Miners, helping people tell stories with photo archives. And all these were prior to his current role as director of the Coventry Digital Archive. You're welcome, Ben.
Good evening, everyone. So what I plan to do today is take you through what we're trying to do with Coventry Digital, Coventry University, and show you the front end of the system and some of the software that we use. I'll then show you the back end of the system and how we work through with metadata on software. Then I'm going to show you how the public can work with us by submitting their own material. And then finally, I'll show you why we're doing all of this. So I guess really what first thing to say is we have no intention of just building a repository and having all of this data in a single place without it being used. The whole point is to connect people with their heritage, heritage that can be 3 years old or 100 years old. So I'll talk for about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes, I think, and then I guess we can move on to questions. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and show you the Coventry Digital front end. So you should be able to see that. So this is Coventry Digital. It's software that we have hired, we lease from a company called Capture. You can see Capture's name just down there at the bottom of the screen. Capture create digital asset management systems for a number of very well-known organizations, National Archive, British Library, you name it, anyone that would have a large amount of digital files that they need to control, manage, in some cases license. They use Capture's software. This is in part the reason why we've partnered with them. Capture a great organization to work with to develop the project and to make it much more than it currently is. We're a year old at the moment. We launched the end of January 2021. In terms of usage, we've had about 320,000 searches in the first year. And that's from about 1,350 or so users. So some people are using it quite heavily. So people from historic Coventry who use the forum and share files on historic Coventry and on Facebook, lots of use on Facebook. So we get quite a few individual heavy users, as well as people looking for very specific things. The system, the front end is built on WordPress. It makes it very straightforward to use, but also very good in terms of development. Software is constantly being updated, so it works really well in web browsers on phones, tablets, as well as laptops. I'm using an Apple Mac laptop at the moment. So it works really well on those kind of systems. So quite pleased with that. I guess in terms of the front end, it's really straightforward. I built a little video. This is just an MP4 that just rolls, that shows some of the content in the system. That is Broadgate in Coventry. This is a crowd, young kids. That's the Rover Factory. That's Radford. That's Jordan Well. Student protests in the early 80s, Hillfields on Cup final day, Muhammad Ali visiting Coventry and Nuneaton, John Yeadon, the artist, Record shop on Photo Road, Smithford Street that's no longer with us, and the Angels who were nuns, and that's Delia, Derbyshire, and that's Market Street. Is that it? Oh no, the floods on Godiva Street, and Neil McDermott's recent portraits, and Pauline Black. So we have this loop, and that's just really to give a flavour of what's in the archive. I'm actually thinking of replacing it and going to a single image kind of thing, just to kind of take people straight into the archive. The setup is pretty standard. I'm just going to have to move my control panel out of the way. We have my little initial to show me that I've logged in. We have a button for the menu. This is my menu, straightforward search. I can go to user details and it'll tell me my recent searches and who I am and my email address, and I can change my password, things like that. We have some galleries, so we can build a gallery of a set of assets. It's going to be quite slow, I think, because I've got all of you guys as well on stream. But you can see some of the more recent galleries here. Richard Sadler's Courtaulds, some Coventry Telegraph images, early images of Coventry, Jenny Parkin, the photographer, community photographer from the early 80s, so on. Lots of galleries. These are quite nice. These E.W. Appleby images from the start of the 20th century are really good quality as well for that kind of era. So we've got some galleries. We have various other options here, which I'll talk about more in a little bit, but we have what's called a contributor area and submissions, which allows the public to upload their own assets for me to moderate. We have a Lightbox, which is a digital filing cabinet. So if I click the Lightbox and look at it, come here, there we are. The Lightbox appears here in a pop-up, and these are some of the images in previous meetings that I've spoken to people about. And it's just a quick reference point. I'd like to develop that software so it becomes a bit more like a digital wallet, but that's just a bit of a wish. But really, it's just a digital filing cabinet of things that I might like. And then you can see here help pages, so quite a bit on help pages. So you can see all the licenses and policies. If you don't get your verification email, don't worry. They're being chewed up quite frequently by very aggressive email filters. A few case studies about the sort of thing that we're looking to do, and help pages on all kinds of things. And then, of course, we've got search. So we can search. Let me just get rid of that Lightbox. We can search, and we've also got a search help. So if I search for, I was thinking about what I could show you today, and I think I'm going to show you, I'm going to search the word infectious because it's COVID. And we've got two maps here from the start of the 20th century. And these are the City of Coventry infectious disease distribution maps. So I'm going to click on one of them. There it is. Now, what I can show you now is how our system is constructed and what you receive at the front end. So we use a bit of software called Smart Frames. What Smart Frames allows us to do is share high-res images, but without losing control over them. So you can see here, there's a smart frame, and the frame holds the image, the high-res image. This is actually probably about 50 megabytes in terms of file size. I don't know if GoToMeetings allow me to share something full screen. I don't suppose you can see that because I don't know whether it's in the web browser or not. But I can make this full screen by clicking on the little arrows. But if I try to right click, it tells me that the image is copyright, that I can't download or use it, need the owner's consent. And actually, if I even try and print screen, it won't work. It'll just stop the print screen from happening. So we have a map here, and on just minimize, please. I've got this control panel that won't minimize. Are you minimizing? No, it's not.
Ben, just a quick one. All we've got is your face. We can't see your screen anymore.
Oh, it's stopped sharing.
Yeah.
How annoying. Okay, how's that? Is that working? Can you see the web browser now?
I can see you still. That's it. Yep.
Sorry, when I went to full screen, it just kicked everything off, and I've had to restart the control panel again. Okay, so we're back to where we're at. So I'll just quickly run over that again. So if I right click, I can't right click save as. What I'm not going to do is go full screen again, because that was problematic, but I urge you to have a go yourself. So click there, takes it full screen, and you can use the hyper zoom tool, which will allow you to zoom in on aspects of the map. You know, if you're particularly interested in, if I just quickly go up here, you can see the different diseases and the legend here. So, you know, you can see wherever you live in Coventry, whether there is smallpox or diphtheria in that little area. And then what we have on this side here is some of the metadata. So very simple. This is what was being put up by City of Culture, and a link through to the Coventry Collections website. Now, what we can also do is we can share this. So clicking share, we can have a direct link to the asset. We can email it. We can use Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or LinkedIn, if that's your thing, if you wanted to share something on LinkedIn. If you use it on mobile, we also have WhatsApp as well for mobile. And what tends to happen is lots of people use this link, which is an embed code, works just the same as YouTube and embeds into another website. Lots of people are using that on forums so that they can share the asset. And what you see on the forum is literally a box with the asset in it. And once again, it has all the same features here, share and full screen. I can actually show you what ends up happening with that. So if I just open a new tab and go to my smart frame control panel, you'll see here that these are some of the assets that people are sharing. And it tells me where it's being shared. So you can see historic Coventry forum, 171 people have viewed an image of what looks like some sort of early bike, tricycle, car thing. And that's what people see. So you can see this embed shape. And this allows me to track those images. One of the beautiful things about this smart frame tech is I can see who's using what they're using it for, how they're using it, where they're sharing it. But more than that, I can control the URL. So if something was shared that I don't approve of, say something is shared on a website that is pretty offensive, I can just block that website and they won't have access to that smart frame anymore. And it'll just block their URL. So we can see here lots of these my path searches. So I was looking at a photo earlier, if you know Coventry very well. This is the old grammar school. I've actually got an exhibition on at the old grammar school at the moment. If I click on that, you can see here, this is before Corporation Street was built. So this is Hale Street going right up to the corner of the grammar school, and then that went up Bishop Street, I want to say, and then Wells Street, which is behind those houses. So I was just having a nice look at this photo because I was having a conversation with somebody about it. But you can see, you know, the benefits of having quite a high resolution image. You can really get into the detail. Whereas if we look at an image that Culture Coventry have put up of the same picture, this is a much lower res image, and it's just not as enjoyable to look at. So yeah, that just illustrates how useful the smart frames technology is. And we've got a huge amount of stuff on there, and it's not just things like old pictures of old buildings. We've got some interesting collections that have only really come to light since we started doing this project. And so just before we started broadcasting, I was having a conversation with John about autochromes, which are color pictures from the start of the 20th century. So this is a photograph that's taken on glass, but it creates a color positive rather than a black and white negative. And these are taken by a Coventry photographer called J.J. Ward. And so this is rural Coventry. So you can see this is Finham Bridge in about 1910, literally just after the technology had been built. Got a French harbour here where he was on his way back. I hope that wasn't the boat he had to travel across the channel on. But there's some lovely images of rural Coventry. So this is one of Whitmore Park. So you can see here it's going to generate the smart frame. So the tech builds the image for us. Might be a little bit slow actually, because we're doing this. There we go. So it's building a smart frame. I'm not going to go full screen, but you can see here the damage done to the original object. It's nice and high res, and this is Whitmore Park. It's now largely housing estates, and a lot of these pools, if you look at the old maps, have gone now. But there's some fantastic images of Coventry in this collection, and it only came to, there's another picture of the same sort of Whitmore Park area. It only really came to light because we were doing this Coventry Digital project. These were in somebody's garage in actually Chelmsford, but you know, they're absolutely fantastic images. That's the Ford's Hospital on Greyfriars Street. It's a shame I can't show you in full screen because it won't let me do that on this software. So that's kind of the front end. It's a tile-based system. I guess you can separate out if that's what you want to do and create a list of images. It makes the images much smaller, but it does give you the metadata that we have, or you can just look at the images that you want to look at yourself. And it'll just keep loading images as long as it's got them. It's a Boolean search, which, you know, I'm sure you all know. It's great, but so if I do precinct, you know, it's just going to be a mass of images, like loads and loads of it, and they're just going to keep coming. There's some building plans here from building what became Tiffany's or the Locarno, if you're old enough to remember it. If you're into building plans, but it'll just keep coming. Huge amounts of images about the precinct going back for donkey's years. So you have to be kind of quite tight in terms of your search terms, I guess. One other thing I would say just at this point is that once we get to a certain amount of images, we'll be probably using some sort of clustering tech with machine learning to help people with their search on a basic recommends model and based on people's previous interests as well and the kind of searches that they're interested in. So we'll start moving in that direction, but we can't really do that until we get 100,000 plus assets, which I'm hoping that we'll get to. We've got about 120 organisations that have an account with us. Not all of them have contributed images, but most of the major institutions in the city have. So Belgrade Theatre have, obviously Culture Coventry through the Herbert Art Gallery, less from the Transport Museum, I must say. Who else? Obviously both universities, the City Council, private collectors as well. And we've also got Reach Licensing, which is the Mirror newspaper group, their whole sort of archive setup. They've got about 220 million images in their system, which they look after, and they've shared with us the Coventry Telegraph archive. So if I type in, if I can type Telegraph, is that spelled right? Yeah, it is. There's plenty of images that come up from the Coventry Telegraph, including the original plans for the Coventry Telegraph, and images that will come from there. So if I click on that search, instead of going oldest first, I'll go newest first, because they're the most recent to have gone in. All of these images are from the Coventry Telegraph archive. If you like royalty, famous people and cars, you're in luck, because there's tons of it that have come in, and this will remind people of the kind of Coventry that perhaps they grew up in. So I guess that's the front end. I'm going to go on now and quickly show you the back end. So this is the back end. It's SQL based. I don't know a huge deal about it other than that. But what it allows me to do is manage individual assets and sets of assets in different ways. So what you're looking at now are images that City of Culture team have uploaded from the Window Wonderland project. If I wanted to look at an individual one, I can just choose to edit it and it should load it for me. There's the image, and we can see here that they've uploaded it. They've given it a title. There is no caption. They've given it no subject place, but we know that Jamie Gray took the photograph, and we know that they've given it longitude and latitude, which means it can go onto Coventry Atlas, which I'll talk about later. Now, the beauty of this software actually is that we can do all kinds of things here that will mean that we have full control over the images in terms of what people can find about them. So if I was to, I'm going to select all 30 of those. So we've got 30 on a page. I'm sure there are plenty more images. You can see here 36,747 in total, but I'll choose those 30 because I'll just show you an example. Go to Keyworder, and I'm going to choose the 2021 profile and select all of these images, and then I can start applying metadata to these images. And there's two types of metadata. There's free text metadata, which just appears in the Boolean searches. So we know that these have got titles. I can have a look and load the values that are already in these. So somebody's already ticked Coventry Atlas, for example, on these. They've already ticked 2021. They've already ticked City of Culture. I'll probably also tick art show, artists, 21st century, because we're in the 21st century. I'd tick art, so on and so forth. Down at the bottom here, is it there? No, it's not. Where is it? I'd also tick, oh, it's there, subject people. I know Jamie Gray did these and he's in here. And the benefit of these tick boxes is different from the text search. Each of these tick boxes, I can connect to API. And so feed through to another location. So if Jamie Gray wanted to put all of his assets with me, I could quite happily say, no problem, I'll host 100,000 Jamie Gray photographs. And then Jamie would then connect in terms of API to just this one button, and he could then feed them across to his own website on a carousel or whatever, or using Smart Frames tech if that's what he wanted to do. And the idea there is, you know, Jamie can continue to sort of quite happily host with us. That doesn't cost him anything, but he can also get the benefit. And that's the case with any of these tick boxes. So we've got, you know, if we wanted to do a City of Culture 2021 feed, we can do it quite easily. And in fact, that's exactly what we're doing with Coventry Atlas, which I'll show you. We can deal with individual assets here. We don't have to select all. So if I just deselect all and choose one, there we go. It tells me it's got a title. It's a different title from others, but it's in Royal Leamington Spa. And we can also, let's just have a quick look at the copyright info. So we know that Jamie Gray created it. We know he's the copyright owner as well. So that's all been set up. When that's published, it will appear within its smart frame, just the same as any of the other assets that I showed you. There's a number of other things that we can do that I probably won't go into, but we can do a variety of other things with the assets. So if I go back to the picture desk, we can hold them in collections. So if I look at this catalog, we've got a series of catalogs here. So let's choose City Architects and then deselect all of those, clear those. City Architects images, which came from some slides that we rescued out of Civic Centre 4, that were taken by the City Architects department in the second half of the 20th century, up to about 1979, 1980. And mostly they're taking photos of things that they want to change, you know, new lamppost or crossing or different signage. But they're great documentary photographs of the city. But again, with the catalog, I can connect API to that single catalog and we can just point it in a direction, which works quite nicely. And again, just one last thing, we have the galleries here that you see on the front end. They're called services for some reason in the back end. I don't know why they don't call them galleries, but all of these are the different galleries that we looked at. So if I wanted to look at Sylvia and Eric, who lived in Camden in 1961, from a box of photos that were sent to me from Redditch. This is Sylvia and Eric's life in 1961. It's a beautiful little wooden box of negative slides, and I scanned them all. They belong to a chap called Neil Grubb now, but what I love about these is we're seeing Sylvia and Eric on holiday, but we also get to see them in their 1961 Coventry home and their friends in their prefab. There's their mate in a prefab. And it's a really lovely, intimate sort of look into that kind of life. So I guess that's how I deal with the assets and work through them. We can add information to them, we can tick boxes about them. All of that makes them incredibly searchable, but allows us to network them into other websites. The other thing to say is that if I go back to the search, go back to this, earlier on I mentioned that the public can contribute. If you're a professional photographer, you use something like Lightroom, you've added your own metadata, you can literally drag and drop the files and they'll come through to me. If you want to submit something, you can click on submissions. Here's some examples from earlier. I can just click on that one to view it. But effectively, I can add that image and upload it. I can edit the metadata. You can see test, blah, 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 blah. I can add this in. I can do that on multiple images. So if you were to add 20 images, you can add, select all, manage, edit metadata, add your name in as the creator, add your name in as the copyright owner. And you can see just blanked out there. But once you've done that, you can hit submit batch. And again, that will come through to me. And I get to see that on this little section. So I've been through and done everything so far, but I've left one, which was a mistake by Victoria, who runs Coventry Archives. And so she uploaded 88 assets into this system without knowing that I'd already got them. So I've clicked on it, but it's been very slow in showing me what they are. That's possibly because we're doing this. Let's try again. Come on. Open, go back, open them, open. Oh, it might just be because the internet is too slow. Effectively what happens is a tile panel comes up and allows me to look through what she's planning to submit. And what that allows me to do is just have a conversation with her if she's not sure about what she's done, or if there's something wrong, or if there are things like photographs. It's a modern photograph, they're street photos, and there are members of the public in there, and we might have issues with GDPR in that case. So it just allows me, before things are sent through and they appear in the back end in here, literally, you know, as these tiles here, it allows me to just simply edit and check. So the public can be involved. So Coventry Digital, what we're trying to do really is connect the public with institutional archives such as Culture Coventry's holdings, of which they've probably put about 7,000 or 8,000 assets up so far, but they have plenty more. The Coventry Telegraph archive, which is owned by Reach, or Mirrorpics as some people know it as. We're also in conversation with Historic England, BBC Archive, UK News. So all of these institutional archives are there to be searched, but what we're really keen is for people to upload their own stuff and connect those stories in, so that we have a much deeper and richer understanding, and through metadata we can build those networks and connections. Part of what we're trying to achieve, and the last thing I will talk about before we can go on to some questions, is finding ways that people can access the assets. So if I go back to Coventry Digital and search, and I'm faced with this search box, and I think I want to look for something, but I'm terrible at searching, and I end up putting something really basic in. So I'm going to choose cars, which, you know, is not intimate at all. So what we've got here is some Richard Sadler photographs from inside the Jaguar factory, which you might be interested in, I don't know. This is where they used to dip the cars. You've got an E-type being dipped there. But, you know, I don't really know what I'm looking for here. We can see, you know, this is the film, and in the sewers, isn't it? During the Italian job. There's the rooftop parking, but my search is far too broad indeed. Not comfortable using this kind of system because it's perhaps a bit too much like a library. So what we did was think about different ways that the public can access different assets. And what we came up with was Coventry Atlas, which is a chance for people to zoom in on their assets. And so this is an example of us using API. So all of those tick boxes in the back end, this is where they appear. So I'm going to click explore the map. And we've got a huge map here of Coventry and a few options. All of these dots are an individual asset within there, and I can click on it and it will bring up a low res image of the asset. It never ports across the high res image. It's always a 72 ppi low res image. The reason that we do that is not because we're being stingy with people getting access to high res assets. It's just this works incredibly well on mobile, and it's built for people to walk around with it. And of course, what we don't want is people's phones being clogged up with high res assets. You know, nobody wants their data to be nabbed by a 50 meg file. So this is a map-based system. It allows you to zoom in on somewhere that's of interest to you. We have a few options here. So we've got an introduction, tell you about what these buttons mean and how you can use it. You can browse the area that you're in. So if I zoom in, let's zoom in somewhere. So let's zoom into, where have we zoomed into there? Come on, zoom in, what's it doing? Zoomed in. Oh, I really zoomed in. I mean, Accra, what's that about? I want to zoom in, I'm gonna reload it. Don't know why I've suddenly appeared in Accra. So if I zoom in onto Coventry, and we can look at any one of these assets here. And then as I browse in this area and move around, what you'll see is the assets on the right-hand side change. There are different types of assets as well. So what we have here is a good example. We have records, which are individual assets. So there's the plans for the O&O in store that was replaced the first O&O in store that got bombed in the war. That's a record, an individual asset. We have collections of assets. So there's a series of assets about St Mary's Undercroft. So that'll be that one there. A collection about Broadgate as well. And then we have some overlays, or as most people call them, maps. I don't know why the software company call them overlays, but these overlays are exactly the same maps that are in Coventry Digital. But for this purpose, what we've done is put them as transparencies, as geotiffs, and they can appear over Coventry. So I'm just going to move the tray out of the way and just show you how this works. So I'm going to hide the pins because it's a lot easier to do that. And we've got some tools. So we've got 3 maps here. One, the development of Earlsdon. So we're going to hide that by closing the eye. And then we've got the 2 EJ Purnell maps. We'll go for the earlier one, which is that one. And then we can zoom in and have a look at this and use the transparency tool to kind of compare it. And you can see here, you know, I showed you that image earlier of Hale Street, just there, right next to the old grammar school. And you can see where Corporation Street didn't exist at the time, for those that know Coventry. So Corporation Street is a post-war construction. Most people would have gone, I presume, up Wells Street and onto Hill Street as well, and then off up to Abbott's Lane via the gasworks that got bombed during the war and rocked most of the city centre when they blew up. So you can see here all these different maps. If I go back to the menu, you can click on overlays, and I've put up an awful lot of maps. Those are the infectious disease maps I showed you earlier. And there are some maps of areas that people might live in. And there are also the ones that I like the most, probably the Gibson city development maps, his plans in 1939. So I'm going to close that one off, and you can see all those different maps. So if you were to live in Stychel, let's zoom in on Stychel and wonder if there's any pins in Stychel. So we can see 4 pins there, so we can click and see what was going on. So there you see. Photograph of the plaque outside of 11 Salisbury Avenue, which is where E.M. Forster ended his days. For those that didn't know, E.M. Forster lived in Coventry towards the end of his life. But really, this is a chance for people to try and look at archival assets in a slightly different way and make it a bit more interactive, so that they can quite happily sort of, again, you can use the slider to sort of compare then with now. We're thinking of improving this. We've already kind of started with trails, so we have no trails in Stychel, but if I drag our way into the city centre, we have a number of trails, and trails are just a way of people engaging with different assets and the physical object of what the asset is. So I'm gonna turn that overlay off actually, just to save us having to struggle with that. And we've got a medieval Coventry one, and there you go. This connects up some assets that we've got, starting at Charterhouse, a little bit of information there, and then working our way through the city. And again, it's all about getting people involved, getting people engaged in the heritage of their city. The software snaps to roads pretty much. We're hoping to improve it so we can draw the software. If we can draw it, we can start working rurally across fields and things like that. But ultimately, we're trying to find different ways to engage the public in archival assets and contributing their own stories, and then contributing them in a broader terms by broadcasting them using things like these trails and various other ways of doing things. Thinking about doing a Pinterest board as well. That's about it from me. I've got to find this control panel now. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Probably went on for a bit too long then, didn't I? But I tried to cram a lot in. So there you go. And I guess we can kind of just go over to questions if people have any.
Is it yellow? Yeah. Oh, lovely. Yellow ice cream. Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah. So where's Amy? Where's Amy? Oh. Oh, dear. Look, she's there at the moment.
Irene, you've got your microphone on.
Really? Let's look at that. Oh, dear. You've been feeding her. Hello.
Right, I've muted Irene.
Okay, so I guess, and if anybody's got any questions, I'm more than happy to try and answer them for them.
What I've just done is I've unmuted everybody. So if anybody's got a question, if you unmute yourself, you can then ask it.
Hi, I was wondering how you were digitizing all the stuff, because I'm thinking digitizing even just sort of slides and negatives, it's really quite a lot of effort. So are you doing anything fancy, or is it just all?
So, well, a lot of the stuff is already digitized. So obviously the Coventry Telegraph stuff's digitized. Where we get a small collection, people come and digitize it themselves with me. So I use a Canon camera, EOS 5DS, I think, with a macro lens for negatives, because they have better sensors. And then that it's tethered through to Lightroom, so people can see what they're digitizing on their screen. And that way, if somebody comes and sits with me for, say, 2 hours before lunch and 2 hours after lunch, they could probably get through best part of 100 negatives. So it's reasonably quick as a process. For very large projects, so if for instance, JJ Ward has about 4,000 negatives that have been found at the Herbert, that they would probably get sent to a company called Genus, which is based in Nuneaton, and they do mass digitization. So that they've just digitized the Country Life magazine archive, which is huge. They're also digitized the Royal Navy archive during lockdown, so they're really geared up for doing large amounts of work. And we've worked with them before. Coventry Sketchbook project, for example, they digitized 150 sketchbooks for us, and they're now all on Coventry Digital. So it really depends. But if you had 30, 50 glass negatives, you could just literally come to my office and do it within a day. It's a very straightforward process.
Thank you.
Hi, Ben. I just wonder how far back have you gone in time?
Oh, good question. So I think the earliest thing we've got on there, I would guess, is we've got maps of Coventry from the 1600s. Obviously, we've got photographs of architecture that's even older. You know, the grammar school was built in about 1300.
Okay.
So we've got images of that. But in terms of original work, I guess that map might be the youngest that we have. But of course, you know, photographic technology really only came into its own in sort of the second half of the 19th century. So a lot of our stuff is post that. I guess we also deliberately look to work on stuff that would be sort of around people's grandparents' sort of age, I guess, because most people's sense of history doesn't stretch much beyond their family and their grandparents, what their grandparents got up to. And they've certainly, you know, if you look at the kind of data that when people go searching on census, the first thing they do is start looking at their grandparents. So you know, 20th century is you know, we've got a lot of stuff that's 20th century, but I guess it's the maps, some of the earlier maps, which are really interesting. And again, you can get those on Coventry Atlas, and kind of have a look at them and compare them. Or you can actually look at the high resolution asset on Coventry Digital.
All right, thank you. I guess, is there any other question for Ben? All right, it doesn't seem there's any at the moment, but you can always contact us or pass your questions on to Ben. Thank you very much. I think that was very informative. I think you're collecting a very rich heritage and culture and history of Coventry with your work, and there is a lot of knowledge you're holding there. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for what you're doing as well for the city.